Are people interested in a John Wick universe without John Wick? Peacock certainly hopes so. Let's talk about their new miniseries, The Continental. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my TV miniseries review for the new Peacock show, The Continental, from the World of John Wick. That's the full title for this show. This is a prequel to the John Wick films, and this is in 3 installments on Peacock of about an hour and a half each. So before we launch into the specifics here of the show and my thoughts on it, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do TV and movie reviews here, and I try to post something new just about every day for you. So lots to check out always on the channel. And if it seems a little bit overwhelming, too many things on the channel, well, I've put them in nice organized playlists for you on the homepage. 2023 TV reviews, 2023 movie reviews, etc. And this one here comes from the World of John Wick, of which I recently did post a John Wick Chapter 4 review. That came out, I think, in February or March of this year. So I've got that up in the movie reviews column, and I will post a link to that at the end of this video. But why don't we talk about this mini-series? So I watched the whole thing. I was going to review it after the first episode, and then I saw it was only 3 chapters. So I thought, okay, well, you know what? Usually I watch like 2 or 3 episodes to get kind of a feel for the show. But since this only has 3 episodes, I figured I would reserve my review until the whole thing was up, so you can watch the whole thing now on Peacock, all 3 chapters. Now, before I even launch into the plot of this and all of that, I do think it is kind of cool that we have these 3 90-minute or so chapters of this miniseries. This is how miniseries were when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. You know, TV channels would run, you know, on Monday and Wednesday, you know, part 1 and part 2 of this miniseries or whatever. You know, we didn't get a lot of these. Now they have on the streamers, you know, 8 chapters, 10 chapters, whatever, for a long experience that I don't always think is necessary. And this was originally conceived as a 10-episode Stars program, and whatever, it sort of fell apart, you know, shortly after that. But you know, it was sort of reshaped into what it is now, which is these 3 chapters or episodes on Peacock. And Mel Gibson was attached the whole time. He is a big part of this. We'll get into that. But yeah, I think this is sort of a nice throwback, actually, to the days of yore when we didn't necessarily have to overstuff everything into an 8 or 10 hour mini-series. That's not to say this is not overstuffed, because it actually is a little bit. I think these chapters could have probably been an hour instead of 90 minutes. But the plot here is that this is the 1970s, so we are in the same universe of continuity as the John Wick film series. But this is the background story of how Winston Scott, who is played by Ian McShane in the films, but here in the younger version is played by Colin Woodall. And he's an Irish-American businessman who has been living in London for a long time, but now he's part of this New York branch of Continental chain hotels. And if you don't know from the John Wick series, these are basically safe havens for legal assassins. And on the grounds, no business may be conducted. That's like sort of their thing. And so we're realizing, you know, okay, how did this, you know, character that Ian McShane plays in the movies, how did he sort of come to power, etc. Mel Gibson plays Cormac O'Connor, who actually is in charge currently of the Continental, as we dive into the story there. And there's a few other people you may recognize in this, but this is not really filled with, like, you know, A-list stars or anything. But all right, so, oh boy. So I am a fan of the Wick series. I think the first and the 4th installments are the best ones. I think the second one is very good. I think the third one, you know, I might need to go back at some point and watch it again, do a run of the whole series or something. But I just remembered thinking the third one was kind of routine from the other 2. It didn't necessarily do enough to set it apart. The one they released this year, I think, is probably the best one that they've done, you know, and that clocks in at nearly 3 hours. So that's no, you know, short runtime either. But one of the things that sets John Wick apart from some of the competitors in the action movie space is, some of the set design, the interesting editing and interesting directing, and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think we get a lot of that here. So let's, I guess, start with some of the positives because I have more negatives than I do positives for this show. I think that if you have never seen John Wick, it doesn't much matter. However, if you have, and I think that's mostly who's going to be drawn to this miniseries. If you have seen John Wick and you're familiar with the stuff, I think it will be a little more meaningful to you. But look, you can come into this completely fresh, and I do think of that as a bit of a positive. You don't need to have watched all four of the John Wick movies. I think usually that's the way it goes with a prequel, since it's taking place obviously before John Wick is really who he is. But or I'm on positive, so let's dig there. I do think some of the fight sequences are pretty good. I wouldn't say they're quite up to par with the best of the Wick series, but I think they're pretty good. Serviceable certainly for a television show. And with that in mind, this does look like a movie. They obviously spent a lot of money, and whatever budget maybe they had for the 10 episodes, maybe they gave the same budget to these 3 episodes. I mean, I think it looks pretty good. The lighting is poor, but in the John Wick series, one of the things I like about it so much is the sort of neon mystique of the lighting, and it just has a different look than a lot of action movies of the same type. This doesn't have that. In fact, there's a lot of things sort of missing from this that we do see in the John Wick series. So let's see. Are there any other positives? Mel Gibson's okay as Connor. I really I struggle a little bit with watching Mel Gibson on the screen these days, or Cormac O'Connor, I should say. But I am a person that I do feel like I can usually separate the art from the artist. There's a lot of people lately who have obviously fallen down this sort of Me Too movement and kind of thing, cancel culture, whatever. That sometimes it can be hard to watch their stuff. But for Mel Gibson, it's not even that so much as it is. I just think he always looks like a crazy person. And in this, it actually works a little bit to the character's advantage. The character is certainly not somebody we are meant to like, so that helps. But I think just in not acting as often as he used to, in the 80s, 90s, I just feel like he's lost something. And so he's not as charismatic maybe as I would have liked him to be. But you know what? Look, Keanu Reeves is not necessarily charismatic. That's not why we are drawn into the Wick character. So all right, you've got that. But so he does okay. But some of the other people are much worse. Some of the supporting characters are just not good actors at all, at least with this particular material. So I guess let's get into the negatives because I have a lot of them and I've already sort of started down that path. So we mentioned sort of the lighting, we mentioned some of the acting. The dialogue here is very weak. And a couple of the things where it veers off of what makes the Wick franchise pop is that, Wick does not have a lot of dialogue. It's not a dialogue-heavy show, or movie, I should say, movie franchise. Keanu Reeves does what he needs to do with that character. Here, there's a lot of talking. I'm not sure I expected that from this. The other thing is the soundtrack is so overbearing. Wick does not have a lot of, as they say now, needle drop moments. There's not a huge host of these, hits. The closing credits have some hits, over it or whatever. Bush sang the one from chapter 3. And so, there's like one or two songs in each one. This is just like, especially in, I think, the 3rd episode, it's just like wall to wall needle drops from all of the greatest hits of the 70s. And it was so distracting and honestly kind of annoying because I think it was an attempt to maybe distract the audience a little bit from the fact that the direction and the acting and the script is not quite up to par with the Wick franchise. I don't remember a lot of big music moments and soundtrack moments. There's a great score to the Wick movies, but in terms of, hits on the soundtrack, no. And this really leans into that in a way that is aggressively overbearing, I thought. So that was something that definitely stuck out to me. So look, overall, this is, I would say, probably not worth a watch unless you are a super fan of the Wick series. You may want to dabble into this with, the first half hour of episode one. And, if you're not feeling it, maybe give it a pass. Episode one, I thought was like, all right, kind of some boring moments, but I wanted to know where it was going. I was at least curious. And then by the end of the third episode, I just was unsatisfied with the whole thing. So I do like that it's in miniseries form and not necessarily the 8 or 10 hours that we get in other things. I wouldn't have watched all 8 or 10 if that was the case. But I was able to get through the three okay. Listen, and in the third episode, there's some really good fight moments. I will give it that. That's probably the strength of this. And they go to the John Wick well of the words on the screen. If somebody's talking a different language, they do like the colorful words and stuff and the same kind of font and stuff. Okay, cool. That's a nice nod to the series. But this is paling really in comparison to any of the Wick films. I think the lowest grade maybe I gave a Wick was a B or a B minus. Maybe for that, that third chapter might have been a B minus. But this is even lower than that by probably an entire step down. Disappointing for sure in many, many ways. I leave the Continental from the World of John Wick with a C minus. I will give it credit for not overstaying its welcome necessarily, but boy, they really did not stick enough to the formula that makes John Wick what it is, I thought. But if you are interested, you can check out all 3 episodes of this now on Peacock. I would be interested in another season of this. I'll be honest, we didn't learn enough about the high table. So there you go. I'm not dismissing it completely, but definitely disappointing. All right, thanks for watching Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time. Bye.